Guys, welcome back. In this video, what I want to do is talk about how to prevent SQL injection. But first, we have to ask ourselves the question, what is SQL injection? SQL injection is a technique where attackers can inject malicious SQL commands into SQL statements. SQL injection allows an attacker to control a web application's database server. The reason SQL injection occurs is because some web applications don't have anything in place to prevent the user from entering in the wrong input. So this is how it works. So there's a hacker online. He decides to visit a website, navigates to this application, and this application is tied to some sensitive data in the database. Now, some of the things that the hacker can do in order to access this database is use this login page. So let's just say we have a web application. In this web application, there's a login page, and some type of way the hacker knows that this login page is going to be some kind of way tied to this database. Alright, so as you know, whenever you go about entering in your username and password, there has to be some type of functionality that ties that username and password to the database. Alright, so basically whenever you enter in your username and password and hit login, there has to be some type of validation that checks your username and password before you're able to make it through to the next page or make it to your account page or pretty much log into your account. So on the next page, I'm going to show you how this actually works. Alright, so this is how it works. So let's just say the hacker, he makes his way to this login page and he's trying to figure out what he can type into these two fields in order to grab this sensitive information. As I said before, this login page is attached to the database some type of way. So let's start this off with an example. Let's just say we have a good-hearted user, a user that doesn't want to acquire any sensitive information from the database. Good-hearted user, no bad intentions or anything. So they go in, log into this form with their username and their correct password, and then they're able to make their way to their page on this website. Now let's just say we have a malicious user. Now, malicious user is a user who's more technically savvy and tries to find ways to go in and manipulate this application. So remember what I said before, that the username and password is tied to some information into the database. So a malicious user may use something like this. So let's just say the malicious user uses this. He enters in this random username. So if this SQL statement is executed, let's just say this or 1 equals 1 is not even here. So if the malicious user goes select all from users where username equals random username, which is not even a valid username, they're going to get an error. They won't be able to log into the system. But if they add this or 1 equals 1, then they will be able to log into the system. And the reason why is because this or is 1 equals 1 is going to be true. So basically what it's saying is select all from users where username equals random username, and okay, if the username is not valid, then we want to say where. So basically if all this is not valid, then we're pretty much just saying select all from users where 1 equals 1. So if this is not valid, it's gonna go to this other or statement over here. Alright, so this is what they can do. These hackers, they can go in here, type this username or 1 equals 1, or password, and go wrong password, or empty password equals empty password, or they can also enter in 1 equals 1. So that's pretty much how SQL injection happens. Now, there are two things that are always true when hackers go in and start SQL injection attacks. So when SQL injection occurs, there are two things that are always true: 1 equals 1 and empty string equals an empty string. Now, obviously, there can be other conditions that are true, like 9 equals 9, 10 equals 10, or another string down here, like, I don't know, dog equals dog or anything. But basically, if these two values are the same, they're always going to be equal to true. So, how do you go about preventing SQL injection? Well, there are three ways that you can go about preventing SQL injection. One is by using a prepared statement, another is by using the store procedure, and the last is by escaping all user supplied input. So with this prepared statement up here, prepared statements are kind of similar to statements that you create when you go about connecting to the database, but they allow you to parameterize parts of that SQL query. So they basically force the developer to define all of the SQL code up front and then pass in each parameter to the query later. So what that means is that if there was a parameter being passed in from a hacker, and the parameter that they pass in is not equal to a value within that database, then what's going to happen is that it's not going to be processed. That particular query is not going to be processed because it's taking in the entire query itself. It's not just taking in, the username and then or 1 equals 1. It's taking everything as a string. And that works the same way for store procedures. It parameterizes the parameters that are passed into it. So they kind of work the same. Store procedures are done a little differently. It's basically a procedure that is created in the database, whereas prepared statements are statements that are called within your Java class when you go about connecting and executing queries to the database. And the last thing here that is used for preventing SQL injection is the ability to escape all user supplied input. So you can do this explicitly within your SQL query instead of using prepared statements or store procedures, but it is recommended to use store procedures as well as prepared statements. But this is another way that you can do it. So say we have this query down here: select all from users where username equals username or 1 equals 1. Okay, so if we simply use this query, then all the users are going to be returned, even if the hacker does not know the username. But this down here is a query that we can use in order to prevent SQL injection. So we would have to parse whatever the parameter is, and this would more than likely be written in Java, but we would have to parse or escape all user supplied input. So this will be the entire value that will be searched for, which will go select all from users where username equals random username or 1 equals 1. And obviously there's probably not going to be a user in that database that has this type of username. All right. So if you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. Don't forget to like the video if you've learned something here. Also, don't forget to subscribe. And thanks for watching.